Let's talk about the Knights of the Toxic God Origin. If you're unaware, the Knights of the Toxic God Origin is a new origin for the game Stellaris that was added with the Toxoids DLC. And what the Origin effectively does, it cripples your homeworld severely and gives you a special habitat, which on this habitat you can have the Special Lord Commander and Knight jobs. Furthermore, you start off with a quest for the Toxic God situation, a situation which will gradually improve your empire to a very powerful degree, I would add. There are a few other bonuses that you get with this. However, I will not touch further on these. The main thing that I am interested in this video are the night jobs, and to be more specific, the quest for the Toxic God. I will talk at length about the different rewards that you can get for questing for the Toxic God, and I will present a build that I made in order to fully utilize the night jobs that you can get. Something that I will note before we begin is that as part of this quest, as part of this origin, your homeworld is severely crippled. It gets a number of unremovable planetary blockers. However, those do not have any negatives besides being a planetary blocker that you cannot remove. So that is something to keep in mind, since some of the quest rewards do lead to that. Now, let me show you something. As you might notice, this is a habitat. On this habitat, I am getting a total of 8.5k research and 6.6k unity, as well as 27,000 food and 1,300 minerals. Now, this is, in my opinion, at least one power of the Toxic God Origin. How did I get to this point? Well, at this stage in the game, this was fairly late in the game, you get knights which produce about 50 research and about 40 unity each. And as you can see here, I have a total of 177 knights. Something that I will note is that this game was played as part of a relaxed, no intellectuals challenge. So I did not build any other research labs, any other Unity-focused buildings on any of my other planets. I did still employ specialists and leaders. I simply did not build any buildings that are meant to produce Unity or science. This planet, this habitat, being the sole exception in order to buff my knights, because that was the whole point of the game. Now, how do I get to the point where I get 177 knights? As you can see here, you get a special building on your habitat. This building is the Order's Keep, and the Order's Keep gives you one night job per 10 populations, or per 10 pops that you have on this habitat. And over time, I managed to accumulate a few pops. I will get into this a bit more in a bit. Let's first talk about the quest of the Toxic God. Spoiler warning, I will now go through the quest of the Toxic God and spoil the outcomes of it. I am not interested in the story behind the quest, I'm simply interested in the mechanics of the quest. So, here you have the different rewards you can get for questing for the Toxic God. At this point you have the stages, you have the different options you can choose, and a few annotations. If you're interested in reading this, feel free to pause it, but I will now head on to the different quests and go through the stages one by one. Now, in the first stage, which apparently is called a homecoming, some of the stages may be called differently depending on your game. There are some points in the game when there are multiple outcomes, there are multiple quest lines, but they all lead to the same outcomes, and I will ignore any branching paths that lead to the same outcome. Now, after managing to complete your first quest line, getting to the first stage of the quest, you get presented with a choice. Either your knights will produce 3 additional unity, while your Lord Commander will produce +4 unity. Note you can only ever have 1 Lord Commander. Or you can decide to get 2 additional research from your knights and 2 additional research from your Lord Commander. Nothing particularly special here, but this sets the tone of the game. In the second stage, you get presented with 3 options simultaneously again. You can produce +2 science. You can produce +3 unity or +4 for your Lord Commander. But here we have the first time that we can detox our homeworld. You can remove the most venomous, pools the most venomous from your homeworld and add a new blocker that does not take up a district. So you can build a new district, and you get +10% research from jobs and +10% ship weapons damage on your homeworld. In my experience, this whole quest line has 2 different paths that you can go down on. You can detox your homeworld, allowing yourself to get bonuses on your homeworld and bonuses for your whole empire, or you can improve your knights. Next on, you are approached by a Shroud entity. You can pay the price for the Shroud entity, and you get 2 choices. Either you can pay 1,000 unity and remove the blocker from your homeworld and get +50% unity from jobs on your homeworld and +5% happiness on your entire empire. However, you will be faced with a low motivation debuff for 10 years. Everyone in your entire empire gets -10% happiness, -10% pop growth reduction, and -10% output from jobs. On the other hand, if you agree to the suggested price, you get a further knight. It is just 1 more knight, that's all you get. But you get the low motivation debuff on your whole empire, as I have stated earlier. Should you suggest to the Shroud entity that the price that it proposes is not feasible, is not acceptable, it will grant you the research option for psionic theory. So should you go something with something like fanatic materialist, and you do want the psionic theory research guaranteed, and don't care about detoxing your homeworld or getting 1 extra knight, which, as you have seen in the grand scale of things, is not too much, you can pick up the psionic theory research here for fairly cheap. Just be aware that the psionic entity doesn't really like you doing that, but who cares? Now, next stage of the quest, there is a challenger. The challenger wins, and a knight asks you to let them have at it again. You can refuse them, tell them that they shall not pass you, and in that case, every single one of your knight will now produce 3 stability. You get 3 stability for free per knight you have on that one system, sadly, but still, on that one habitat, I should say. On the other hand, you can decide that you would rather allow them to set the honor. In that case, you get one of 2 choices. Either you can do nothing and leave the place. This does not have a direct outcome. This does not give you a bonus of any kind. However, and don't take this as fact, I believe in the end of the quest, when I note that you do get a low motivation modifier, the low motivation modifier is not gained instead. And then you can detox your homeworld again, get +1 districts and +5% resources from jobs. Right. Next stage of the quest. There may be some branching paths here, but those branching paths lead to the exact same outcome no matter what. +3 unity from knights or +4 from your Lord Commander, +2 science from your knights, or detox your homeworld with 25% extra food on your homeworld and 20% strikecraft attack speed. Very basic. Then you get approached by a stranger, and the stranger asks your help. You can give them your help, in which case you will detox your homeworld again. You get +1 max districts with a new blocker, and the blocker adds a number of gas pools. I am not entirely certain what it's called. However, you get to mine the exotic gases, and I believe that you get to build 3 of those buildings on your homeworld should you choose this option. On the other hand, should you have gone psionic, you will be offered this line right here, and inform them that they are in fact lying to you. Or you can simply refuse them your help. In either case, the outcome will be the same, and as far as I know, this is the only time that having psionically ascended matters in this quest. As far as I know, I might be wrong here. You accuse them of being a traitor, which happens in both cases, with the exact same line of text, and your knights will now increase your alloy production across your empire. This is, I believe, a 1.5 times modifier, 1.5% modifier that is applied to every single alloy producing job you have. Note that I have in the very first page with my Excel, I noted down 1%. That might be wrong. I believe it is 1.5%. Let's go on. You are approached by a person requesting to fornicate with you. You can refuse them, and you will be cursed. The curse will mean that your empire gets Seminel's curse, the Seminel's curse modifier, which grants you a -50% pop growth reduction. However, every single one of your planets gets +3 monthly organic pop assembly. So this can be quite useful should you decide to go Gene Ascension and spam out a bunch of different, special buildings, cloning beds, yes, and gene clinics. However, another thing is applied, namely the Lover's Pox, which is placed on your special habitat where you get your knights. And here you get -100% pop growth reduction. However, your squires now produce 0.25 monthly organic pop assembly. So you can have a whole lot of organic monthly pop assembly with this choice. On the other hand, you can agree to their demands and later take a device that they have with them. This will grant you +2 additional science from your knights and a special decision on your main habitat. Note, this decision only applies to your main knight habitat and not to any other habitats that you may be in possession of. On your main habitat, you will get the decision Activate Dimensional Manipulation Device. This will cost 100 dark matter, and it will mean that the Order's denizens will now grant you half a building slot and an extra housing each, as well as +50% to your maximum districts. The Order's denizens are these special districts right here. They replace your leisure districts on the habitats where you can get knights, and they provide squire jobs. Squires improve your knights output by a bit. Right. Or you can simply depart with a kiss after the deed is done, and you get a nifty 15% pop growth speed increase. Going on, we get to the, I believe, last part of the quest. A legend returns. You can do nothing and simply keep it under wraps. Or you can celebrate a bit and splurge on a plus 20% happiness and plus 20% unity for 8 years. It does, however, cost 10k energy, so if you have the money, it might be a good idea. Now, after this, the Toxic God will be revealed. It is a creature, a giant creature, that you need about, to be safe, 60k of fleet to defeat. It has a bunch of shield. The shield does not regenerate, and a bunch of hull, which does regenerate. It does not have any armor. After defeating the creature, you get two different choices. First, you can take the creature for yourself. The creature has a Colossus weapon which toxifies worlds and turns them into toxic worlds. This can be useful, especially if you get this somewhat early. You can have the first Colossus in the game. But your knightly order will be disbanded, which means that there will be a modifier added, which usually you get 1 knight per 10 pops on your main habitat. After you pick this, you will get 1 knight per 20 pops on your habitat. And I believe that if you wait longer, the knightly order may be fully disbanded so that you do not get access to knights anymore. You want to pick this option if you until now detoxed your homeworld and are happy with losing your knights. Or you can decide to slay this Toxic God creature. In that case, you will get a special relic. The relic will allow you to get 15% extra strikecraft damage, and it will unlock a decision on all your habitats. This decision works similarly to the decision that the Baula give you, which allows you to turn a planet into a Gaia world. And instead it will add the Order's Castle building to the habitat. This building cannot be removed and cannot be disabled. And on this habitat you can no longer construct the leader districts. However, you get access to the Order's Denizens districts. Furthermore, the Order's Castle adds 1 squire job and 2 knight jobs. So you have access to more knights, at least more spammable knights. Also, with the second option, obviously you keep your knight order intact. Now, what can we do with this? I came up with a Knights of the Farming God build for the game. The main idea is that the more pops you get, the more knights you get. And livestock, slaves, do not need any jobs since they get their default livestock job. Alongside this, I went with a challenge. It may be a strategy, probably not really, since you will be crippled severely at the beginning of the game if you actually do this. The challenge is effectively that you do not get any intellectuals. This means no researchers, no administrators, no priests, no, what are they called, no culture workers. I made a single exception, namely I got to employ the people on my habitat. And on my habitat, I allowed myself to build the buildings that increase unity or research from jobs. One can make a Puritan playthrough of this. I did not. However, at the point where you get access to these buildings, it does not really matter anymore, since you should have taken off by then. Now, what are the necessary parts to be a farmer of a Knight of the Farming God? You need access to the livestock slavery type. For this, you need to be xenophobe. So you need to pick the xenophobe ethic. And second, you need the raiding bombardment stance. You can either add militarist as well and go for barbaric despoilers, or you can spare an ascension perk in order to get raiding bombardment stance. In my first game I did with this, I picked up the ascension perk. In my second game I picked up barbaric despoilers. you can do both. And what the raiding orbital bombardment stance allows you to do is, instead of harm the planet, grab the pops. And this is how you get your livestock. The general game plan is that you get a fleet, go to the enemy empire, to their planets, and then bombard them until you get all their pops, except 2, and then leave. You do not even need to win the wars. All you want is their pops. Now, how does one maintain order, 100% stability on the main habitat, which you will be cramming thousands of slaves on, as you have seen previously? It's really quite simple. Lower housing and lower amenities only affect happiness. And with happiness, you have a minimum of 0% happiness, which I believe gives about minus 40% stability or something like this. However, as you remember, one of the options you get for the quest is that your knights give you 3 stability. So you simply pick up this, and by that you can easily counteract the massive unhappiness that reigns on your habitat. And then, due to you having a bunch of slaves, you have a bunch of crime. You could try to spam enforcers. However, there is a very simple option for that, namely the Crime Lord deal. The Crime Lord deal gives you plus 10 stability on a planet, plus 50% crime, and a few criminal jobs, 5 to be precise. However, the main draw of this is that it restricts all negative crime events from happening, except the criminal underworld negative effect. This will simply add a bit of crime, which in the grand scheme of things is nothing, since on this planet we should have about 20k of crime by now. And you get 9 criminal jobs, which again, if you have 1,000 livestock, that doesn't really matter. Only thing is, it does cost you a bit of energy from the trade value lost. Note, your main species that is not enslaved probably does not want to be squires as much as it wants to be criminals. So if you have your main species on the planet and they cannot be knights, they will become criminals before they become squires. Let's go on. What for Ascension? You can obviously go with whatever Ascension you want, but if you go for the Farming God, I will heavily suggest that you go for the Genetic Ascension. Multiple reasons. First of all, you get Clone Vats, which is a fairly good food sink, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the game, but you can spam those as much as you want with this build. And you get to gene mod your livestock to massively increase the output. First of all, noxious pops cannot be livestock. I learned this the hard way, and you need to be able to gene mod that off them, and I believe that is only possible with a Genetic Ascension. Then you get your obvious good traits for your pops. You get nerve stable, docile, very strong, industrious. Note, industrious and agrarian both apply to the output that your livestock gives. You could, if you have your lithoids, go for the traits that give you exotic gases, volatile motes, or rare crystals. You can go for crystallization if you have lithoids, giving you some extra monthly pop assembly. Or if you have plantoids, you can give them budding. Sadly, there is no version for non-plantoid, non-lithoid pops like that. Obviously, you want to go for the delicious. Getting extra food from livestock is your whole deal. And should you feel it necessary or interesting enough, you can go for inorganic breath, giving yourself a tiny bit more upkeep, which is instantly counteracted, alongside some exotic gases per month. All of this can be done. You can mix and match. You can pick something like nerve stable, docile, agrarian, delicious, and less strong, just strong. The builds that you can do are endless. you can play around. You can also modify some of your species differently than others. What about the economy? Your knights will give you a baseline 10 science, 3 unity, 1% alloys, and 5% and 5 naval cap, just baseline after the quest. On top of that, you get bonuses from squires. On top of that, you get bonuses from increases to science, increases to unity. Be aware that the naval cap and the stability increase is also, interestingly, increased by your squires. Very roughly, this is not very representative, but being unoptimized and placing a culture worker job and a scientist job on the same habitat that I had my knights on, the scientists gave roughly 10 science per month, while the culture workers gave 10 unity per month, while my knights on the same habitat gave me 28 science and 10 unity per month, using some squires. But still, obviously, your knights are scientists and culture workers put together and then improved, with the caveat that you can only have them on your main habitat. So your habitat has an output of food. Should you be lucky enough to find yourself getting some lithoids, you get also some minerals from there. You get a bunch of unity and a bunch of science. The only things that you still need to worry about regarding your output are energy, which you could simply sell your food or some of your minerals for, alloys, which you just need to spam, strategic resources, which are fairly easy to spam, assuming that you go for a no intellectuals run, and consumer goods. I will argue that you will need relatively few consumer goods, since most of your pops will be livestock, which never have any upkeep, at least in regards to consumer goods. And what you have will be relatively few high value specialists, especially since once you get a large number of livestock, you will be somewhat limited in how many pops you can grow due to the logistic pop growth scaling. And you will have a few energy workers. What I have heard suggested is that you could go mercantile and get your consumer goods and energy from trade value. What speaks for it is that habitats, the lifeblood of any mercantile empire, are available very early. You get the research ready to research from the get-go, and it covers the two big resources that are really necessary at this throughout the game. Namely, it covers the two big resources that you really want throughout the game, namely energy and consumer goods. However, there are a few things that speak against it. Firstly, you need to really spec into it. You need to spend a full tradition on it, and if you want it to be good, you should also go for a few other things to boost yourself up a bit. Also, you will, if you do that, probably deal with a heavy consumer goods overflow, which you could sell for more energy, but I don't know. I don't think it's necessary. And lastly, assuming that you go for barbaric despoilers, getting a trade league will be very unlikely, if not impossible. I believe that being in a trade league is restricted if you go barbaric despoilers. So I don't think that going mercantile is a good idea here. Another thing that you might want to look out for is that at the beginning you do suffer severe alloy penalties and energy penalties. So getting the necessary alloys to both get a fleet good enough to get some slaves and get habitats at the same time, I don't really think that is feasible. But I might be proven wrong. Now, squires. Do you want squires? You probably want... you will get criminals before you get squires. Criminals have a higher pop weight, so to speak. And you do still need other resources. Something which you could definitely do is use a slave race. If you have a race that only has like 20 or 30 pops to it, and you already have a couple hundred livestocks, why not use them as your, squires? On the other hand, I do believe that squires might very much be worth it to get, simply because the once you get about 50 knights, the output of one squire can be equated to the output of one knight. I believe it's worth it, but I might be wrong. Now, what are some useful ethics or civics that you could go with? In my belief, stratified economy to get zero upkeep regarding consumer goods from your slaves is worthless. This is simply due to the fact that basic subsistence, the living standard that does not give any upkeep for your pops, is automatically applied to every slave race. And you will only have slave races as livestock. So you do not need stratified economy for that. Stratified economy does reduce your output from workers. However, I do not believe that that is particularly good, since you will not have that many workers. You could go with something like social welfare, or just go decent conditions. Otherwise, if you want something special, you could go for the materialist academic privilege. The plus 10% happiness bonus, the plus 10% research bonus applies to knights. Or you could go for egalitarian to just give yourself a happiness boost across the board. Again, in the grand scheme of things, at least in the late game, you will not have that many workers. So it might definitely be worth it, in my opinion. However, what I in the end went with is something different. First of all, to get your slave pops, you will need to win an early war, or at least as early as possible. And your economy will be very weak. You will get very little alloys, especially since you get minus 10 or 15% alloys from your quest, which means that going militarist, regular militarist or fanatic militarist for the extra fire rate, and distinguished admiralty for even more fire rate could be very much advisable. Besides that, meritocracy, extra specialist output, so more alloys, extra knight outputs, very useful. Masterful crafters, I don't know how to feel about. I don't think, at least if you go for a no intellectuals run, the buildings are necessary at all. The building slots are necessary at all. And the extra consumer goods, assuming again that you don't have too many workers in the grand scheme of things, I'd call that somewhat useless as well, to be entirely honest. Later, however, going for catalytic processing and conserving the minerals that you will have fewer of, and just pumping as much food as you can into alloys, that is definitely worth it, no questions asked. Now, the first build I ran with is this right here. The Knight Commonality, Masterful Crafters, Meritocracy, Traditional Intelligent Rapid Breeders, with Authoritarian mixed in. Again, I informed you why I don't think that was such a good build, and this right here is my second build, and I believe that it was a fairly good build. Barbaric Despoilers and Distinguished Admiralty to get the raiding bombardment, to get to the plus 10% fire speed to win an early war, with Fanatic, Xenophobe and Militarist in order to help yourself out a lot. Fanatic Xenophobe gives you plus 10%, plus 20% pop growth speed, which I believe is very, very useful. However, I could be convinced that going Fanatic Militarist instead is better. And then Militarist for the Barbaric Despoilers and for the Distinguished Admiralty, and in order to go for, the whole win your early war thing. Intelligent for your knights, Traditional for your knights, and Budding since you might go genetic ascendancy, this might be a good thing. I picked it because I felt like it, to be entirely honest. Now, what rewards would you want in order to go for the knight build? The first two choices are definitely research. You want to get as much research as possible early enough. Again, if you go no intellectual, this is doubly important. Then on the third pick, I picked a new knight. Getting Psytech might also be very viable. Then you definitely, without question, instantly pick the +3 stability. Otherwise, it will be necessary that you declare martial law on your main habitat, which will decrease the knight's output, and grab a bunch of soldiers. Then, on the fifth, I picked, I believe, Unity. Get a bit more Unity to get your edicts out, to get your traditions done. Or you can just go full research. Obviously, plus 1.5% alloys per knight in the entire empire, and +2 research and improved habitat. Note, this fifth point is the last time that you can get increased unity from your knights. And then, in the end, obviously you want your relic. The big thing, the big reason why you want it, is not actually the +2 knights per habitat, but simply not losing the knights that you have on your habitat on which you have your 5,000 different slaves. Now, spamming this kind of habitat could be very useful. Getting the 2 extra knights on most of your habitats, getting a few extra squires, very useful. So, to wrap it up and go over it again, what is your general game plan? You want to find and raid primitives to get livestock and squires. If you do not have access to any primitives, you fix your economy as quickly as possible, build up a fleet as big as possible, and start a war and steal pops. You do not need to win this war. You can simply declare a plunder war and go to the nearest enemy planet and bombard it until you get all the pops. This, however, requires you to break through defenses. In my game, I was not able to get this done until about year 100. This was very late. After this, I skyrocketed due to me now having access to slaves and access to a very large number of knights. But the earlier you can get this done, the better, obviously. Then you get as many knights as possible. You rush the quest. Note that per 2 knights that you have, your quest gets accelerated by a bit. You ascend genetically, at least I did, and then you get the best job, the knights. And in the end, you just bask in your infinite science, unity, fleet cap, and alloys, and own about 90% of all the pops in this in the galaxy. Something that I will note that you probably do not want to do is actually conquer most of the galaxy. You want the other empires to still exist. You want as many other empires to exist as long as possible. Go there, plunder their pops, return home, wait a couple years, and then go out again to harvest anew. With how the pop growth works currently, you need few pops to get quick growth. And you, having a large number of pops, will grow very slowly. So going out and grabbing pops from empires with few pops means that they grow their pops more quickly, means that you get your pops easily and more quickly if you go there and grab them from them. Now, what I will leave you with when I end this video is this picture right here. 1,732 pops on a singular habitat, which is meant for not that amount of pops, with 177 knights. Thank you for watching.